The woods have a way of making ordinary people sound crazy when they tell the truth. A breeze becomes breathing, an empty closet becomes an assumption you regret. The most terrifying stories never start with screaming or blood on the door. They start with nothing being wrong. That's what gets you. That's when your guard drops, your instincts soften, and the dark has enough room to step in. Tonight's stories aren't legends, folklore, or convenient campfire fiction. These are filed reports, ranger interviews, deputy notes, and witness panic captured in real sentences. This is free, cabin in the woods stories no ranger can explain, and they all start one way, innocently. If you've ever stayed in a cabin in the woods, you probably did what I did the first night. Checked every lock twice and felt safe because they all clicked shut. The ranger I spoke to later said that was the strangest part. Whoever walked up to our cabin that night and stood outside our bedroom door never technically got in. My name's Chris, I'm 29 years old from Denver, Colorado, and this happened last September at a rental cabin on the edge of the National Forest in Wyoming. My girlfriend and I just wanted a quiet weekend away. We booked the place through a normal rental site with good reviews and photos. It wasn't some sketchy abandoned shack. It had a small porch, metal roof, wood stove, and a line in the listing that said, "Forest Service Rangers patrol nearby, but they won't bother you unless you call." We got there late afternoon. The cabin looked exactly like the photos. One story, trees wrapped around it, no other buildings in sight. Inside was basic but fine. One bedroom, little bathroom, living room with a stove and a couch, and a tiny kitchen. The only thing that made me pause was a low door in the hallway, like 3 feet high, with an old brass knob. The binder on the table called it plumbing, crawl space access, do not open, so I didn't. We made dinner, watched the sun go down behind the trees, then sat on the porch until it got too cold. That kind of darkness out there is different. No street lights, no quiet highway hum, just black tree line and wind. Before bed, I did a full loop because that's just how I am. Front door knob, locked. Deadbolt, locked. Back door by the kitchen, locked. Windows, every latch turned down. My girlfriend laughed and said I was in a paranoid dad mode, but it made me feel better. The bedroom door was left closed but not locked. We went to bed around 11, with the dull orange glow of the stove spilling under the door from the living room. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. It was still pitch black. I remember lying there, eyes open, too scared to move at first, trying to figure out what felt wrong. Then I heard it. Footsteps. They were in the living room, slow, heavy, spaced out. Not those random little ticks and pops you get when a house cools down. This was weight landing on wood. One step, another, then the hallway floor squeaked. I recognised that exact squeak from earlier when I walked over it. The footsteps stopped right outside our bedroom door. I could see the outline of the brass knob in the faint orange glow. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. For a second, my brain tried to grab onto a normal explanation. Maybe it was the owner, maybe there was some emergency. But then I remembered. Everything had been locked, and whoever it was, wasn't calling out. There was a tiny metallic sound, like someone testing the knob with just their fingertips, trying not to make noise. The knob didn't turn. They didn't try to force it. They just tried it once, and then the sound stopped. The silence after that was worse than the footsteps. I lay there staring at the knob, barely breathing, waiting for something. The front door opening, glass breaking, anything, but nothing. Just that heavy, unnatural quiet and my girlfriend's breathing beside me. After what felt like forever, she shifted and whispered, "Why are you awake?" I whispered back that I thought someone was in the cabin. That woke her instantly. She grabbed my arm and told me to call 911. We didn't have reception inside. I already checked earlier. The only way to use my phone would have been to go outside. I wasn't about to walk past whatever had just been standing by our door. I decided to check the cabin first. I got out of bed, grabbed the heaviest thing I could reach, a cast iron skillet from the kitchen, and eased the bedroom door open. The living room was empty. The front door was shut, chains still hooked. The back door deadbolt was still turned. I checked every window, every latch still down. The little crawl space door in the hall looked exactly the same, dusty, closed, undisturbed. No wet prints on the floor, no moved furniture, nothing. I did 2 slow laps of the cabin with the pan in my hand, heart going crazy and finding absolutely zero to back up what I'd heard. Eventually, I told her it had to have been the stove or the wood shrinking in the cold, or just my brain running wild. We went back to bed. I kinda dozed, but I wouldn't call it sleep. The next morning is when the house settling excuse died. We walked out onto the porch with our coffee, and my girlfriend stopped so suddenly I bumped into her. "Chris," she said, "look at the step." On the top step, in the thin layer of dust and dry dirt, there was a clear bare footprint. Not a shoe print, bare. You could see each toe, the ball of the foot, the heel. It was angled straight towards the front door, like someone had just been standing there facing it. There were a few more, 2 fainter prints on the porch boards right in front of the door, a couple in the dirt at the bottom of the steps. Every single one of them pointed towards the cabin. None of them pointed away. There were no boot prints leading up to them, no drag marks, no animal tracks, nothing disturbed around them. It was like someone had walked out of the trees, up the door, and stood there for a while, long enough to make deep prints and then just stop existing. That was it for us. We packed the car as fast as we could. On the way back to the highway, we stopped at the little forest service station to tell someone what happened. It felt dramatic even saying it out loud, but if there was some creep messing around out there, I wanted it on record. The ranger at the desk didn't smile or roll his eyes. He listened to everything and started writing it down. "You sure the doors were still locked when you checked in the night?" he asked. "Yeah, all of them. Windows too? Every latch down. And that little crawl space accessing the hallway? Any sign that being open?" "No," I said. "We never touched it." He wrote for a second, then let out this tired breath. "You're not the first people to report weird stuff at that cabin," he said. "We've had calls about footsteps, people swearing someone was inside watching them. Couples report of footsteps on the porch like you're describing. We go out, we check everything, and there's never any forced entries or tracks we can follow. Nothing we can put into a report as an actual cause." I asked if he thought it was just someone messing with renters. "If it is," he said, closing the file, "they're getting right up to a locked door and walking on dirt without leaving sign in or out. I've been doing this a long time. That doesn't add up." We drove home that afternoon. On paper, nothing happened. No breaking, no crime, nobody hurt. But that bare footprint on the step, pointed at the door, with no matching one leading away, comes back every time I hear a cabin floor creak at night. They say the scariest stories are the ones that could actually happen. I still don't know that night was some person I never saw or something I can't explain. I just know this. Somebody stood outside our bedroom, tried the handle, and according to every lock and track the ranger checked, they were never there at all. We thought the scratching in the walls was mice, until the ranger showed us the mattress and food wrappers in the crawl space directly under our bed. My name's Chris, I'm 32 from Utah, and this happened last October. My girlfriend and I decided to take a long weekend and stay in a cabin instead of camping in a tent, because she's nervous about sleeping outside. The idea was, 4 days of hiking, fire pits, and then locking a solid door at night so she would feel safe. The place we booked was a small rental in the woods on the edge of a national forest in Idaho. I won't say the exact company name because the listing is still up, but it was one of those cheap, no-frill places you find on Google when you search pet-friendly cabin in forest. The cabin itself was basic, a 1-bedroom, a tiny bathroom, a living room with a wood stove and a couch, and a small kitchen. No Wi-Fi, no TV, and no cell service once you pass a certain point on the access road. There were other cabins on the company site, but according to the map, ours was the only one on that particular spur road. When we arrived, everything felt normal. The porch had a couple of chairs and a stack of firewood. Inside, it smelled like old wood and cleaning products. We picked the bathroom, dumped our bags on the bed and did the usual city person in the woods check. Lock on the doors, latches on the windows, curtains we could pull at night. Everything worked. The first day and night were great. We hiked, came back exhausted, made food and fell asleep early. At around 3 in the morning though, I woke up to a sound inside the cabin. It was scratching, not loud, just a faint, irregular scraping somewhere in the wall behind the headboard, like something with claws or nails were dragging lightly along wood. It would happen for a few seconds, stop, and then start again in a different spot. Lower, then higher, then closer to the floor. I'm not going to lie, my first thought was mice or maybe squirrels. We were literally in the woods. You expect critters to be in the walls. My girlfriend whispered, "Did you hear that?" I told her it was just animals and went to check. I turned on the bedroom light and listened. Of course, as soon as I did, the scratching stopped. I checked the floor, the baseboards, under the bed. Nothing. I even opened the door to the living room to see if it was the stove or something. Silence. After about 10 minutes of hearing nothing, we went back to sleep. The next day we mentioned it as a joke. The cabin has mice kind of thing. We hiked a different trail, stayed out later, came back sore and tired and, again, passed out pretty early. Night 2 is when it stopped being funny. At around 2:30 AM, I woke up to that same scratching. Only this time, it was directly under where my pillow was. It sounded like someone slowly running fingernails along the underside of the floorboards, following the length of the bed. It was too deliberate. It would stop exactly when I sat up, then resume when I lay back down. I got annoyed and slammed my fist against the wall. The sound stopped. A second later, from under the bed, we heard a soft, 3-tap knock on the floor. My girlfriend sat straight up and grabbed my arm. "That wasn't a mouse," she whispered. I grabbed my phone to use the flashlight and got down on the floor. There was nothing under the bed except our bags. No hole, no vent, no visible opening, just boards. We were both wide awake now. I suggested maybe it was pipes expanding or something, even though I didn't believe that. There was no heating system beside the wood stove. We left the bedroom light on and eventually dozed off again out of sheer exhaustion. The next morning, I decided to take a better look around the outside of the cabin. If there were animals under the house, there had to be some kind of access. Walking around the side, I noticed that the cabin was raised slightly off the ground on cinder blocks. There was no lettuce skirt all the way around to hide the gap. On the side under our bedroom, one piece of lattice looked different, newer. The screws didn't match the others, 2 of them were missing, and the board was just barely hanging on. I pulled it back. Behind it was a dark rectangular hole, big enough for a person to squeeze through. The dirt inside was flattened, like it had been crawled over recently. I shined my phone light in. I couldn't see far, just cinder blocks and darkness. I had that immediate adrenaline spike you get when your instinct knows what you're looking at before your brain wants to admit it. I put the board back and told my girlfriend we were leaving. We packed in record time, threw everything in the car and drove until we got self-service. From there, I called the rental company and then the non-emergency sheriff's number the company gave me. I told them we've heard scratching and knocking under our bed and there was a crawl space opening that didn't look like part of the original cabin. The sheriff's deputy met us at a small ranger station about 40 minutes away. A ranger came too. They both went back out to the cabin with us following behind. Seeing that place in daylight with 2 armed people there should have made it feel safer. It didn't. It felt like walking back into a crime scene we'd always been in the middle of. The deputy went around to the side where I found the loose litters. He pulled it away and shined his flashlight inside, then swore under his breath. "Don't crawl in," the ranger said. He got down on his stomach with his own light and looked inside. Under the cabin, directly below the bedroom, someone had set up a little nest. There was an old thin mattress flattened out on the dirt, a couple of crumpled fast food bags, empty water bottles, a pile of cigarette butts, and, worst of all, 2 small holes cut up through the floorboards, right under where our beds had been. Not big holes, just enough for someone lying down there to look straight up into the room. There was also a section of the underside of the bedroom floor where someone had scraped lines into the wood over and over. Long, shallow scratches in arcs, exactly where the headboard was. "It's not animals," the ranger said quietly. The dirt was soft enough that any recent footprints would have shown, but by the time they called for backup and crawled in further, there weren't any clear ones. Whoever had been staying under there, watching renters, listening to them sleep, was gone. The rental company swore they had no idea. The ranger showed us the original building permit later. There was nothing in it about a crawl space being used for storage or access, just raised foundations. They closed that cabin for maintenance after our report. A month later, out of curiosity, I checked the website. It was listed again. Same photos, same description, no mention of what had been under the floor. The sheriff called me once to say they never identified anyone. No arrest, no suspect, just evidence of unauthorized habitation. They say the worst part is knowing how easily it could have gone differently. If we stayed a 4th night, if I ignored the scratching, if whoever was under there decided to do more than just watch. We booked a cabin because she was scared of sleeping in a tent. Now she jokes that at least with a tent, you know if someone's lying underneath you. But I don't think it's a joke. I'm a seasonal ranger in a national park I'd rather not name, because I still work there and cabin 17 is technically still in service. The first time I knew something was wrong with it was simple. Cabin 17 was marked vacant for 3 days on my log. The trail up to it was untouched after a fresh snow, and when I unlocked the door, the sheets on the bed were still warm. This was late October 2 years ago. We had an early storm blow through, one of those heavy, wet snows that drops fast and then clears in a couple of hours. When that happens, we do a welfare sweep on all backcountry cabins. Mostly it's routine, check the chimneys, make sure food lockers are latched, and hope nobody left a stove on. I was assigned to the North Loop, 5 cabins, spread over maybe 8 miles. I set off around noon. By the time I reached cabin 15, the sky was blue. Fresh snow was already starting to melt on the open rock, and my own boot prints were the only ones on the trail. Cabin 15 was exactly how you want to find it. Locked, cold, swept out since the last party. Their sign-out slip was in the box by the door. I noted it, radioed in, moved on. Cabin 16, same story. Cabin 17 was at the very end of the spur trail, a little older than the others and tucked back into a thick fir trees. It's always been a bit of a pain. The slope holds snow longer, the door sticks when it swells, and the radio gets patchy back there. The log said last party left 3 days earlier. No new reservation until the weekend. I turned off onto the spur and immediately noticed how clean the snow looked. No print lines, no tyre tracks, nothing. Just my boots biting into a perfect white ribbon leading to a dark, silent shape between the trees. I remember feeling weirdly relieved. Last two assignments I walked into cabins trashed by weekend warriors. This one looked untouched. The padlock was on the hasp, like it should. I took it off, slipped it into my pocket, and pushed the door open. The first thing that hit me was the heat. Not blazing, just a gentle, unmistakable warmth. If you've ever walked into a room that had a space heater on all night, you know that thick, slightly stale warm air that doesn't match the weather outside. It was like that. The thermometer by the door read 67 Fahrenheit. Outside it was barely 35. My stomach did this small, slow flip. I stepped inside. The wood stove was cold. No embers, no ash heat, no smell of recent smoke. I checked the firebox with a gloved hand anyway. Ice cold. The windows were all latched from the inside. The little propane cooktop was off, gas valve closed, no lantern burning. That's when I looked at the bed. The cabins have one double bed with a thin mattress and a stack of folded blankets at the foot. The blankets on this one weren't folded. They were rumpled, pushed back like someone had just climbed out of them. I put my hand flat on the top blanket. Warm, not room temperature warm, body warm. I pulled my hand back, looked over my shoulder like someone was going to be standing there. Nobody, just the cabin, the creak of settling wood, my own breathing loud in my ears. I checked the windows again, this time really checking. All latched, no cracks, no pry marks. The only door in and out was the one I opened, and my boot prints were the only ones leading to the porch. I radioed in, got static first, then a half-garbled response from base. "This is Ranger Thomas at 17. Cabin's supposed to be vacant. I've got interior heat and signs of recent use, but no one inside. No tracks. Do we have any off-book reservations out here?" A pause, some murmuring on their end. Then, "Negative on that, Tom. 17's been empty since Monday. Last party checked out on time. You sure you're in the right cabin?" I looked at the metal plate screwed into the door. 17. I'd unlocked it with the key on my north loop ring. "There's only one," I said. "Copy. Do a sweep, secure it, call it in when you're done." So I did what we're trained to do. I checked every corner, opened the little storage cupboard, looked under the bed. Even though I knew if someone had been there, they would have had to vanish through solid walls. I checked the outhouse behind the cabin. Empty. No cigarette butts, no food wrappers, no fresh trash in the bear box. Back inside, I tried to talk to myself into the simplest explanation. Maybe the last party just hadn't shut things properly. Maybe the storm had pushed warmer air down. Maybe I was just overreacting to a bed warmed by the sun through the window earlier. Except, the bed is against the north wall. That side barely sees daylight. I decided to strip it, pull the blankets off, shake them out, let the cabin cool before I relocked it. As I lifted the second blanket, something white slipped out and fluttered to the door. It was a piece of notepad paper, folded in half. There was a date written at the top, yesterday. Under it, a single line in shaky pencil. "I left when they started circling. You should too." I remember going cold all at once, from the inside out. I checked the back of the paper, hoping it was some old joke, something yellowed or water-stained. The paper was crisp, the pencil mark was clean, no smearing. It had not been sitting there for 3 days. I radioed again. "Base, I've got a recent note in 17, dated yesterday. No checking on the log, no tracks. Do we have any SAR activity up here? Any hunters?" "Negative," they said again, louder this time. "Tom, you're alone on that side of the ridge today." I almost told them I didn't feel alone. Instead, I snapped a photo of the note, folded it, and slid it into my pocket. I stripped the bedding completely, checked the mattress. That's when I noticed something else. A faint ring of darker wood around the bed frame on the floor. A circle, maybe 3 feet out, like the boards there had held moisture or weight in a pattern. Walking, circling. By the time I stepped back outside, the snow around the cabin had started to crust. My boot prints in and out were still the only ones there. I locked cabin 17, slapped the metal plate as I passed it like that would make any difference, and got out of that ridge faster than I'm proud of. Later, in the main office, I showed the note to my supervisor and asked if maybe the late registered guest had left it and just dated it wrong. He looked at it for a long time, jaw tight. "The last person who stayed in 17, he said, "never checked out. Car still in the lot. We did a full search last week." He slid the paper back to me like he didn't want it. "And we never found a single track leading away from that cabin either. We don't list cabin 17 as closed. It's still on the map. It still gets booked. And every time I go up there now, I check the bed first. If it's even a little bit warm, I don't stay. And I never, ever wait to find out what they meant by when they started circling."